So I always say that the first Ayurveda teachers I ever had were my Indian grandparents. And their generation really held on to a lot of principles of Ayurveda. And it sort of got lost a little bit with my parents' generation. So they really taught me a lot about herbs and spices and nature and what's growing around us. And it really resonated with me without me realizing how important that was until I went through life, grew up, sort of lost my connection to myself, and then I was reminded of all this.
Amazing. So it's definitely started from your grandparents. Did you find this practice here, or was it something? When did you know that you wanted to really pursue it more as a career than just kind of a lifestyle practice?
So we came here in the late 70s, and Ayurveda, anything Indian, was really not in the communal consciousness. It was not around. And so I think I did what most immigrants do, which is you just try to like go with the flow of what was going on. I think as I became an adult and I was circling back and going through a few careers, it became really loud, the voice inside my head, to go back to the roots. And I started to see openings in this culture. We're way too stressed out, but we want the same things. We want to have less stress and a better quality of life. And I think we're all learning that. Even when we were like all involved in a very like productive, stressful lifestyle, I think we always knew that we had to like find ways to balance that. So I saw that the way society was heading, we really needed these ancient practices, and they were starting to grow back in America. And I think one of the biggest avenues was yoga. People started to get into yoga, and then Ayurveda is now following in its footsteps.
Definitely. And do you see that more with younger generations? Do you see that with your generation as much? Just kind of within the Western realm, you know? Is there an age that you really think people are attaching to this? Do you think it kind of missed maybe our baby boomer generation or anything like that?
Great question. I think it might have missed the baby boomer generation. And then the first Ayurveda schools, they really cater to 30, 40, and 50-year-olds, and that happened in the 90s. And you never really saw young people seeking this, and that's why I think this program at the Institute is so important, because we are tapping into the younger generation, and the millennials need it. You know, they really need to find a connection, and they really need to know themselves, because you're spending so much time externally and on your devices. So they're all resonating, and I think it shows.
I think, and I totally agree with that. I feel like just as a person who, I don't know if I'm Gen X or millennial, I feel this sense of isolation just from, you know, granted you have your maybe 4 or 5 years when you're young, when you don't really have technology, but kind of the second it like hits you and it comes into your life and it progresses through your life and it gets more evolved, and you know, technology gets greater and it turns into more facets of your life, you really do become isolated. And I think that's the thing that Ayurveda does. It's more about the togetherness. It's more about wholeness and not necessarily just this one singular avenue to go.
Absolutely.
Totally.
You know, Ayurveda is a sacred ancient science, and so the sacred element doesn't leave anything in the realm of Ayurveda. So whether you cook or you meditate or you're even walking, you do it with a sacredness. And when you have that word or that energy within you, then you realize that it's not about making life mundane. It's making every moment magnificent. And I think we need that, because we tend to feel mundane because we're bombarded with information all the time. So when we can bring it back into like moments that we can cherish, it brings juice back into our lives.
Oh, absolutely. What would you want people to know about Ayurveda?
So Ayurveda, at the core of its essence, is to know thyself. And when you translate Sanskrit and you translate like some of the most important verses in the ancient texts, it really says to know thyself. So Ayurveda, you can get very caught up in doshas and eating right for your dosha, but really it's to know who you are. And when you know that, then you can be in harmony within yourself and the world you live in. And I think that's just the basic essence. And once you learn a little bit, that little tweak can be a magnificent change in your life.
Definitely. And I just want to add this little question because I feel like it might be good for the Institute and Aveda specifically. What are your feelings about the connection of kind of being an Ayurveda program but kind of going within Aveda, the company? Do you like Aveda? Does it kind of follow Ayurveda practices in any way? How do you feel about that?
I think the history of Aveda, the fact that Horst was so influenced by India, and I think that essence has been part of the company for so long. And like any company, I feel like it's been a beautiful winding river, and I feel like it's gone through changes of being in the cosmetic world or the industry in the large, but it's never lost where it came from. And I feel like I'm seeing this winding road kind of going back to the beginning. And I also think the environmental philosophy that Aveda holds makes it a really conscious company. And that just goes hand in hand with Ayurveda.
So my favorite thing about Ayurveda is probably figuring out how to find my unique internal balance in order to help other people find theirs. I'm also interested in really bridging the gap between Ayurveda and aesthetics and focusing on how changing things internally with your own balance can be reflected on the skin. And one more thing I'm looking into is the connection between Ayurveda and animals, and that's something I hope to find out more about.
My favorite thing about Ayurveda is learning how humble of a science it really is, because it's been around for so long and people incorporate so much of it into their daily lives without even realizing it, with essential oils and herbs and cooking and things like that, where people don't even know that they are tapping into this amazing ancient science, but they are, and they don't even realize how truly helpful it is.
The thing I love most about Ayurveda is the subtleness of it and the idea of cultivating radiance from within, and how what we do in our daily lives can really create this inner beauty. I love that there's this aspect of beauty infused into every aspect of it, whether it's food or lifestyle. Everything in it is like